All right, I guess I will start this off now. Again, my name is Scott. I'm an alcoholic. Sobriety date is January 3rd, 2008. I surrendered after, probably 25 years. I started drinking when I was about 12. So after about 25 years of alcohol being my solution, I finally resolved myself to the fact that I was not going to stop drinking. I tried to quit again, and I couldn't. So I resolved myself to the fact that I wasn't going to stop trying to drink or trying to stop stopping anymore. I was going to drink myself to death. And something happened, and I got in this room. So that was the start of my journey. I won't get into a heck of a lot about what happened before that. I think we all know. A lot of good times, a lot of times that I thought were good, a lot of times I thought were happy. I want to just pause. And Patrick, man, I've known you for quite a while, brother. Welcome back. Good to see you. And Robert, man, love you. Good to see you, bud. And the chip takers, Harold, and who was the other one? I forgot. I'm sorry. Johnny, 9 months. Good to see you, buddy. And Hector, 60 days. Welcome, you guys. And Ron, welcome. And welcome back. I think I've seen you around in 28 years. It's a big deal. I initially, these guys kind of sucked me in, and I didn't take a cake this year. I wasn't around. I didn't go to any meetings around my birthday in January, and I wasn't going to do it. And then I kind of got into February, and I'm like, yeah, fuck it. But the thing is that I learned in this program is the fuck it's are one of those things that aren't good. We got to pay attention to those, because the fuck it's will get me right back out there and get me back into a bottle, because, I'll start to think about what my solution is. Not what this program's solution, not what's in this book. I'll start getting back into what I think the solution is. And I've been up here while the guys were reading. It's funny, I was just reading some step 3 stuff. Because whenever I get into a point like this in my sobriety, and it's a good time, Louis, man, thank you for asking me to share. Because I'm in one of those points in my sobriety where things aren't good, things aren't bad, but my head's telling me everything is all fucked up. And, there's nothing fucked up in my life. My life is going along pretty good. The kids are doing really great. Work is amazing. But in my head, my head's running off saying, you're not fucking happy. You're fucking, everything's wrong. I'm on the golf course today, hit an errant shot, and I'm like, you're a big piece of shit. On the golf course. I'm driving down the street. I almost swerve into somebody. I'm a piece of shit, but my head starts to get into that part. And that's when those fuck it's come. And that fuck it button, that when I'm in the book and when I'm in the steps, and that fuck it button that's really small and in somebody else's pocket and it doesn't come out, gets really fucking big. It gets big, and that fuck it button gets in front of me. And I notice before long I can't see anywhere around it. And eventually I only knew one real solution that ever got me away from that before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was a bottle. Usually a bottle of Jameson. And I could be in a bar. Where I came from, I'd be in a bar with 100 people, and I would feel alone. I would be with people that loved me and feel like I didn't belong. And that's where my disease took me. It's not where alcohol took me. If I didn't have alcohol, I probably would have put a hot one between my ears a long time ago, because that was the only thing that got me out of it. And the only thing that got me out of that now, the only thing that I have as a solution now is in this book. And in these steps, and what I learned here. And I was thinking as I was reading some of this step 3 stuff, I have a crisis of step 3. Whenever I get into a place like this, it's always a crisis of step 3. I'm trying to think that, my head steps back in. My thinking starts to step back in. I try to start directing the show, even though the show doesn't need to be directed because there's nothing fucked up. Like I said, the only thing that's going to get fucked up is if I keep trying to direct stuff. So I get into the book here. And as I was reading this, I was going through this as the readings were going on. And, it's funny how this just jumps right out at us. It says, our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. My life could not be any fucking better right now. I'm career-wise, kid-wise, the only thing that's there is the spiritual-wise. And that's what's starting to drift. And I'm glad that I'm here. And I'm really, thank you again, because I needed this tonight. I really fucking needed this tonight. I took a welcome chip. I didn't get up and do it, but I just threw it on the floor. But I took a welcome chip. Oh, there it is. Along with the 14. Because you know what? I got to remember that when I get into this state, Mentally, I got one day. I don't have 14 years. Today I've got one fucking day, and I bet there's guys that have 30 days or 2 days or 3 days that have a lot more sobriety today than is up in my head. And that's what happens. You know what? And the thing is, these guys that have been around for 30 years and 15 years and 20 years, you taught me that that's absolutely fucking normal for an alcoholic, and it's okay. If I don't think it's okay, guess what? I start to distance myself, and I start to get back in that hole, and I start to put the books up, and I start to put the walls up. And I start to lob grenades out at you because I don't want you close to me when I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling fear, or I'm feeling whatever else it is that we feel as alcoholics. I have to, put those books down. I have to come back here and I have to throw up on my shoes and tell you that, you know what, I don't feel okay. Even though everything's okay, I don't feel okay. I don't feel depressed. I've been trying to find out what the fuck it is for weeks. What is wrong with me, right? I'm an alcoholic. I've got a disease that's centered between my fucking ears, speaks to me in my own voice, either tells me that I'm the best guy on the planet, best at everything, or the worst at the same fucking time. And I start to listen. And when I start to listen, I can't understand. I mean, you get it, right? And when I start to listen to that, I'm not listening to this. And I'm not listening to my heart. And I'm not listening to my higher power. I got here as a staunch atheist who would pray to a God that I didn't even believe in to kill me because I couldn't handle life. And alcohol wasn't working anymore. Today, I'm a man that has a higher power. I call it God sometimes. I call it the universe sometimes. I call it shithead sometimes. It's not me. And I get that. And honestly, lately, I've forgotten some of that. So when I do that, I've got to go back to step 3. And as I was reading that, it brought me back to this memory. I was a couple weeks sober, and I've been sober 5,000. I gotta open this phone. 5,194 days, and I was probably about 15 days sober. And I was up on a business trip up in San Francisco, and I was in a meeting, and there was a guy that had some time, had maybe probably the same amount of time I have now, and he was talking about these steps that I knew nothing about at that point. And he was talking about how when he was new, or when he first came into the room, somebody had talked about doing all these steps, and they took a hold of him. And one night they took him and they went off somewhere and they did all these steps. They kind of went through the steps in one night. They kind of went through and learned the principles and did some writing and some things in one night. And for this guy that was afraid to go to talk to people at this point, brand new sober, something in me, one of these, God shots, called a God shot or a higher power, said, you can talk to this guy after the meeting. And so it kind of came up as I was going through this. And I remember I walked up to this guy and I said, how does that work? How do these steps work? How does it go? And he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm 15 days sober. What the fuck do I got going on? I was at a business trip. I was going to go grab some food and go back to my hotel. And he said, hey, let's go over to this Burger King across the street. So we went over to the Burger King, we got a cup of coffee, and we went into the back. And we sat down, and he pulled out a piece of paper, and he said, and a pen, and he set it down, and he said, you don't need that right now. And he actually walked me through the steps, and he kind of did it from a simplistic perspective, and I was actually, for the first time in my life, I was open-minded enough to hear some of the stuff that he said. We went through step 1, powerless over alcohol, and our lives become unmanageable. We talked a little bit about that. He said, he had me tell him a little bit about the story like I told you a little bit earlier about, I was going to reserve myself to drink myself to death. And he said, if that's not unmanageability and insanity, what the fuck is? Who makes a decision to drink themselves to death because they can't control alcohol? He said, there you go, step 1. And we went through that. And then he went to step 2, and I'm like, whoa, this fucking God stuff, I don't want to hear about it. Don't tell me anything about it. And he said, well, are you willing to maybe think that maybe there's another way? And I said, as long as there ain't no fucking God involved, hell yeah. And he said, you just did step 2. He said, well, we'll get to the other piece about the higher power. And then he said, number 3, he said, do you think that something else can help you? Do you think that maybe, he said, you're in AA, right? And I said, yeah. He said, do you think maybe it can help you? Are you willing to actually kind of take some of this stuff to heart and genuinely try this stuff that we do that keeps us sober? And I honestly, at that point, I stopped. And I looked at him, and I looked down. I think I had a couple of tears coming down my eyes at that point. And I said, I don't have any other choice. I said, my other choice is to to drive off the cliff at Angeles Crest, because I used to do that. I used to get in the car drunk, drive up Angeles Crest, and hate myself because I was too much of a pussy to drive my car off the edge. And I said, you know what, there's no other way. I was at the last house in the block. So I became willing at that point to go, I'm going to try whatever it takes. And then he got me into, he put the piece of paper over to me, and he said, okay, now, do you have any bad feelings about anybody? And I said, what? He said, resentments, bad feelings. And I said, oh, yeah. I was in, about a month and a half before I got sober, my ex-wife told me she wanted a divorce. The IRS was hounding me for over $200,000. I had resentments coming out my ears. I could go back, my third grade teacher. I could go to all kinds of shit. But he said, pick out a couple of them. And he said, write it down this way. I'm resentful at, and then write down their name. And I'm like, okay, I'm resentful at Sarah. And he said, and he said, now write this, because I have fear of. And I wrote that. And then I didn't know how to do it. And he talked me through what this stuff was, and starting to identify what those things are, those fears, those things. And in essence, I went through and I started to write this stuff down. It was funny, the things that I was resentful at were minuscule compared to all the things I was afraid of. And that was kind of the first cut that I got of that. And we kind of did that bit. And then I read it to him. I did a step 5. I read it to him. I read that stuff to him. And then I got to step 6, and he said, here's some of the things. He pointed out some of them. We didn't do a thorough, full-on 4-step, but I got the idea. I got the gist. And we got to step 6, and he said, well, so it looks like here that you're dishonest, you're selfish, you're self-centered, you're egotistical. And he looked at me and said, just like me. And he shared a little bit of his stuff. And it was funny, when he told me about his kind of 4-step and a little bit of his story, I found out he was a professional boxer that fought at Evander Holyfield. And he pulls out this picture and he shows me, and it's got his one shot he got in Evander Holyfield. Holyfield's face half caved in, and he's like, I don't remember much after that. But the funny thing is he told me, he said I was drunk when I did that, and he said I had to find this higher power stuff, and you can too. And he got into step 6. And step 6 for him, and I've remembered this to that day, he said, step 6, I'm like, I don't get this God stuff again. I don't get this character defect stuff. And he said, do you really want to live and be the way that you've been your whole life up till now? And again, I had to stop because there were things that in my head, this is when I know it's different. If it's bounced around up here and it's not down in here, I know that I probably shouldn't listen to it. I should probably stop and pause. But at that point, I said, no, I don't want to be like that anymore. He said, well, let's pray. And we did the 7-step prayer. I didn't know what it was. He said, repeat after me. And I did it. We didn't do any amends or things like that. We kind of talked about amends. We talked about change. We talked about those types of things. He gave me kind of a brief introduction into what a 10th step looks like. He says, we do this stuff. He says, up in San Francisco, he said, this group of men that you met, this is how we do it. We call it doing the steps. And he says, we do it every day, and we have a piece of paper we keep with us all the time. We write this stuff down, and then we call each other every day and we talk about it. He said, that's our 10th step. We do that every day. We do our 4 steps, our 5th steps. We do all that stuff every single day. And then we got through, and he said, the prayer and meditation, we said a couple of different prayers that he had. I don't remember exactly what they were. And then he said, you're part of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, and now you can share your message. And I'm like, I only have 15 days. And he said, listen, buddy. He said, there's people that don't get this far that have been here for 20 years. And I was like, and it stuck with me. It was funny. It stuck with me. And that was the first step, or first taste I got of these steps. Now I've done them. I've gone through them with a sponsor. 1 through 4, and then I went 1 through 8, and then I went 1 through 12, and then I did 1 through 12 again, and I've gone through it with men that I've sponsored. So I understand these steps, but to be honest, I don't always practice them. And this for me tonight is one of those things, and one of the reasons why I took the welcome chip and the newcomer chip is because in this program, as long as we stay sober and we don't drink and we keep that peace, we have an opportunity to start our day over at any time. We have an opportunity to take those 5,100 or whatever days and say, yes, I know those are experiences that I have, but all I can do is have enough experience and have enough spirituality and step and in the work that I've done to get me through today. And you know what? By talking tonight and by going through this and sharing my experience and my strength and my hope with you, because today I have a lot of strength. And look at the strength around you. If you don't think that, if you're sitting in a place where you're not feeling any strength, if you're not feeling the power and the energy, just get out of your head for a second and just look around you and look at somebody next to you. There's so much power. There's so much spirituality. There's so much God in this room. And I find that, and sometimes I don't look at it. Sometimes I'll sit over there, just watch the meeting, and leave, and that's kind of what I've been doing lately. And I honestly can say I found love in these rooms. No, not the kind of love that going out boning women, but I found love for other people, and I don't need to hide behind this stuff anymore. I can come up in here and I can bare my soul to you, and I can tell you that I'm not always okay, and that sometimes sometimes my head gets in there, and sometimes I'm just sometimes I'm just still a garden variety alcoholic. But the difference today is I have a program. I know how to do this stuff, and I have people that will help me walk me through it. And we have a lot of fun in these rooms, and I have a lot of hope in these rooms. And I'm like, I just have to tell myself there's nothing wrong. Get back in the book and keep doing the work, because it's there. I didn't have tools before I got here, guys. I had nothing. I went to therapists, and all I asked them was funny. I would always ask them, I just need some tools. I need some tools because I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And I never got anywhere near what I got in here, thousands and thousands of dollars of therapy. So if you're looking for something, if you're like me, that today, even with some sobriety behind me, don't know how to live life on life's terms, you're in the right place. We're in the right place together, and we can walk through it together. And all we have today, and that's all we've got. So there is a solution. I'm going to go back, I think, when I get home and read there is a solution, and we agnostics again, and just get myself back. But today I'm a newcomer in my mind. And I'm going to look at it like that. And I'm going to try to regrasp my sobriety, and maybe I'll do a fifth step with one of you guys on the retreat or something like that. So I appreciate you all listening to me tonight. Thanks, guys, again, for giving me my cake. And I love you all, and I hope you have an amazing night, and hope you stay sober, and see you next week. Thanks.